My video this month is going to be a bit different. I've been quite ill over the last 4 weeks, to the extent that I'm only just now, at the end of week 4, able to get out of the house and just walk a little bit up and down the street. It's been a real shock to the system. I thought I was nearly completely recovered. So to wake up one morning completely bedbound and to work through these last 4 weeks of illness and breathlessness and to keep my spirits up has been very difficult. So what I'm looking at here is the view from our front window, and this has been my distance from the garden over the last few weeks. And I've been watching as day by day this beautiful plum tree ripens at a distance, and it's been a very hard thing to do, to stay connected when I've needed to keep my feet up, which makes it very difficult to actually be out in the garden for any length of time. But this window has been wonderful. All the jasmine that I planted, and the honeysuckle, the beautiful flowers, and these plums which began in the spring as tiny little green knobbles. And the first day when I noticed that they'd turned from green to yellow, and they're now red, and every afternoon I can go out and check and see if there is one that's ready for eating yet. Most of them are still a little bit hard, but also, as well as the plums, these branches have been absolutely full of little birds. Maybe later in the day I can come back and film them as they hop around in the branches. In the corner of the porch I have this Vietnamese coriander, which is one of a succession of cuttings I took when I was at Wrighton Gardens working with Garden Organic that I've kept alive over the years. And during the time that I've been ill, my husband's been watering everything for me, keeping it all alive. I know that makes him quite anxious because it's a big responsibility. He knows how much all of this means to me, but he does it because he loves me. The garden keeps growing whether I'm in it or not, and this honeysuckle and jasmine that I planted 15 years ago now create the most exquisite scent. So when I'm sitting inside on a hot day and able to come out, the scent drifts into me and connects me with the outside again. And now I can choose whether I focus on the weeds and all of the stuff from the drive that's building up that I haven't been able to get rid of, or I can choose to focus on this lovely flower bed. Again, buttercup rose filling the wall, the beautiful pink cosmos that I grew from seed and planted earlier in the year when I was feeling better, little gladioli in the corner, which strangely were very deep pink last year and now are white. Can't be the same plant, I don't know what's happened there. Clematis raguchi, beautiful delicate purple bells. In my orchard corner, the grass is getting long and it's weedy, but it's still beautiful. I planted cornflower here last year. I just threw a handful of seeds in and they've come up through this yellow rose and made the most beautiful splash of colour as we come in the gate. Behind them is the chair that's blown over, one that I was sitting on as I gave directions to my daughter on picking the apples earlier last week. Under the cornflowers, lobelia, my favourite blue. And the apples, like the plums, are turning this beautiful rosy colour. This tree's called Discovery. It's one I planted because I remembered the variety from my granny's garden. I used to pick the apples. They have the most incredible flavour, and the flesh is white with a touch of pink, which is magical to a child who's used to golden delicious John O'Gold from the supermarket. Turning this direction, these are the russet apples, which are looking a bit sad this year. Such a promising crop. We had a big hailstorm which I think has bruised and damaged a lot of them. We could still get apple from them. It's going to involve a lot of sitting down, cutting out the bruised bits, but the flavour will be worth it. The path has almost been closed by the lemon balm. I've already cut this back a couple of times this year, but as you walk through it, there's the most beautiful scent. I did actually manage to cut my little box bushes before I was ill, so they are not too bad, nicely shaped. In all this summer heat, the lettuce bed's gone to seed, which is normal. I'm waiting to sow a little bit more lettuce for the cooler months ahead. This is never a good time for lettuce, unless you're just appreciating the shapes. These big spires with their seed heads on the top. I don't know if you've ever seen a lettuce flower. Here's the blossoms nearly over, but there are still bumblebees and a strawberry growing up through the middle. I'm looking for all the beauty in the midst of the jobs that need doing, trying to hold back my frustration at not being able to do more. And here's a seed head of an allium Christopheri that I filmed earlier in the year, leaning over and dying, but an extraordinarily beautiful shape. Right, here's another choice. I can either focus on the weeds between the cracks on the patio and the little drifts of compost that have blown out, come out of the bottom of the pots as they're being watered. I can lift my eyes up and I can look at that incredible blue of an agapanthus. Looking close up for the beautiful things. This is a courgette flower, and behind you can see the courgettes that are still coming. We've had a really good crop from these this year. It's been wonderful. I particularly like them either very finely shredded in salads or chopped and fried in butter, sometimes with a bit of garlic. And I have runner beans coming, not ready to pick yet. This is a huge improvement on last year when it was so hot and dry that the plants were stressed and they didn't pollinate. I barely got any beans at all until very late in the season. They really are beautiful, beautiful flowers, although these are in the shade of the leaves of my pattypan squashes. I've got a nice truss here of a tomato that I had labelled as garden peach but clearly isn't. It looks more like a black cherry tomato, but it isn't that either, so I think it might be a cross of some kind. An accident, but a very tasty one. One of the joys of the garden at this time of year is the fruitfulness, just the sheer abundance of what's there after all the hard work earlier in the year. And thank goodness I was ill now and not then. So this is one of the quinces, which is swelling beautifully. As you can see, it's covered in a sort of velvet, but when it's ripe in late October, November, it'll be a bright yellow and it will smell of Turkish delight. The greenhouse has rather run away for me as well. Usually I would do more pruning to stop all these extra growth of the tomatoes, but I haven't been here to do it. But Simon has been watering. So I've got lots of lovely tomatoes coming, and we've been eating these for a while now. These are the tigerellas. This branch of tomatoes has decided to head off somewhere else and is lying across the top of a rather sickly looking chilli plant. I don't know what's happened to the chilies this year. They really haven't taken off. This one has some nice little purple chilies on it. And if I pull back, you can see the lushness of the lemongrass. That's the long spikes, and the pomegranate behind. And then here are some of my better chilies. I think they've probably needed feeding more than I've been able to do lately. Here I have tomatoes called Burpee's Delicious, big beefsteak tomatoes, still very green, but what I will do with those is roast them with garlic and onions and herbs and make up a tomato sauce for pastas and pizzas over the winter. This variety is called Sweet Brooksby. It's a local one, and it's one that I am growing for the Heritage Seed Library and Garden Organic to save the seeds and send back to them so they can be distributed to other members. It's a variety that was developed at Brooksby Agricultural College, not far from here, and then lost for a long time until the family of the person who developed it donated the seed. And there's lots more coming here, lots of flowers. Just look at the shine on these little purple chilies. I think there are a few things that's joyful in the flower world as a sunflower. This one's growing up through the middle of my French beans and is being partially held up by a frond of fennel, a wonderful plant for birds because it produces lots of insect life. I suppose it's a wonderful plant for insects as well. What I've noticed, there's been a lot of wasps feeding on the nectar from it. That's got to be good news because it means they're not on my plums. At this time of year, the wasps are looking for sugar to feed themselves up. Earlier in the year, when they were feeding their larvae, they were hunting for grubs and aphids, so they are a really important predator in the garden, even if they are a nuisance when you've got fruit growing or having a picnic. And if I raise the camera, you see the real glory of fennel, far taller than I am, just dancing against the sky. Beautiful yellow. This is the flower of a elephant garlic, which I planted in this little bed years and years and years ago, and it disappeared. There was a hole where the leaves had been, it looked like something had pulled it out. And then recently it started growing back again. So it's now actually growing out from underneath a small pond that you can't see underneath all of this. It's actually made of an old washing up bucket in there in the undergrowth. If I pull back, you'll be able to see that these crocosmia leaves at the bottom. You can see the beautiful orange flowers, otherwise known as Montbretia. But some of these very tall leaves are not crocosmia, those are bulrushes, which have grown in my tiny little pond. Last year I had some yellow flag iris, but I don't seem to have had any of those this year. Then on the right, yellow crocosmia is just coming into bud. This flower is physalis or Cape gooseberry, which I've got growing in a really big self-watering bucket system. This did get a bit dry while I was ill, but seems to be recovering now, and there's lots of little fruits coming on it. You can see in there they're like the little Chinese lanterns. These are grown as ornamentals as well. They turn bright orange, the ornamental ones, in the autumn. But these contain tiny little fruits inside, which will grow to about the size of my thumbnail, slightly bigger. It'll be a lovely creamy apricot colour, very tart. It's the sort of thing that you often find in really good fruit salads. This is this small convolvulus down in the bottom of the hedge where it really doesn't matter, so I can let it grow. It's a beautiful little pink one, cousin to the big white ones that you get in the hedge. As always happens at this time of year, the coriander bolts, produces flowers and goes to seed. I really don't mind this because although I love the cilantro, the leaf coriander, this is possibly one of my most productive crops. I don't know if you can see here the hoverflies that come to it, so it's incredibly important, providing them with nectar, and their larvae will be eating the aphids, keeping a balance in the garden so that I don't have to use pesticides. Any flower like these, the sort of the umbrella shape, is very good for these sorts of insects. What you'll also notice, if I come in closer, the tiny little green seeds there, which are really delicious as they are now, but they will dry into these brown ones, which is what you buy from the supermarkets for curries and such like. So I'm going to leave this coriander here for the insects, who will produce the green seeds to turn into the brown seeds, and once the whole plant has gone brown and dry, I'll cut it and I'll take the seeds off and put them in a pot for cooking with, making our curries. And then behind the coriander are carrots and the beautiful red of beetroot. The harvest looks even better from the outside, ready for picking, where the fruit have got more sunshine. White buddleia is in full flower as well. Good food for these huge white-tailed bees, as well as for the butterflies. So that's my mid-August garden. It's not looking the way I'd hoped at the beginning of the year when I was feeling so much fitter. I thought that maybe with this summer, the combination of my better fitness and lockdown, I'd have the time to have it looking just as I wanted it. But life ain't like that. I've been away for 4 weeks. As I say, Simon's watered and watered and watered and watered, bless him. Kept things alive. He's cut the lawn, which is beginning to look a bit parched now, but not too bad. But it's still beautiful, and it's mine, and it's full of fruit and insects and flowers and little beautiful things that I can focus on as I walk around the garden. Reminding myself to look at the things that are good now rather than worrying about what I haven't done and what I need to do in the future. And looking at the hammock that I've enjoyed so much over this past summer, particularly when I was ill, when I wasn't able to do anything else. I was lying in that hammock under the umbrella, looking up at the sky and watching the swifts and the red kite. If you found this video helpful, please do click on like below and subscribe to my channel. You might also like to hop across using the links to my Facebook or LinkedIn pages where you'll find much more content.